Hey everyone, and welcome to this special episode of Thrive. It's part of our series coming to you live from the AICPA Engage conference in Las Vegas. Today's spotlight is on Richard Korn. He's the Director of Product Management at Bill. Richard shares his unique perspective on innovation, product strategy, and trends that are driving the next wave of finance. Plus, here's standout takeaways straight from the conference floor. Our conversation is packed with insights that could inspire your next big idea, so stay tuned. This one is definitely a must watch.
Welcome to Thrive, a Paychex business podcast, your blueprint for navigating everything from people to policies to profits. And now, your host, Gene Marks.
So, Richard, thank you very much for joining me. Glad that you were here.
Absolutely.
You're titled Director of Product Management at Bill. First
Correct.
of all, talk to me a little bit about what Bill does.
Yeah, Bill is a pretty cool company.
And by the way, it used to be Bill.com, right?
It is.
Now it's Bill.
It's Bill.com, and I still have a hard time.
Me too.
I mean, there's some companies that did it successfully, like Amazon.com. They dropped it. Salesforce, I think, did well, but no, Bill is such a short name. But yeah, it's Bill. We started off as a platform for accounts payable. Kind of the original genesis of the company in the early 2010s was everyone's on paper checks. Money movement is going from manual to using the web, using the cloud. So I'd say Bill pioneered outsourcing accounts payable and allowing, businesses and for accounting firms to kind of offer a new service, basically.
Optical character recognition. The documents come in by email and other sources. Right. Bill is able to scan it, read it, understand the data, boom, bring it into your accounting system, right, and schedule payments.
Exactly. And what's actually more powerful is just the control infrastructure. So we'll get rid of that manual work of getting the documents and get rid of the paper. But then how about you have multi-level controls? Yeah. So you have a business, where do you want people to approve it? Right. How about you have a controller or a treasurer? You can have an approved bill, but you can wait to pay it. Yeah. So it gives you, it's a quite broad area.
It is. And it works well, and it's good with error handling. I understand because I have clients that use it and love it. Yeah. And it is, one of these misconceptions I've always found with Bill is that it is it's for bigger companies or whatnot, and that's not the case. I mean, small businesses use this product.
And it's so cost effective. Like if you were going to hire a person to do AP, I mean, yes, small businesses use it because it's going to basically not eliminate a whole person, but let them do better, more important work, 100%, right?
100%. Yeah, and that's what some people realize. They think if we use this, does that mean we're going to fire our accounts payable people? And my smartest clients don't do that. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff to do. And if you have a good employee, just because a platform like Bill is able to do this stuff for them, it just frees them up to do other work. So so accounts payable is where Bill started.
That's where it started. Yeah.
Now it's evolved.
It's grown
talk to me about
so
that.
much.
Yeah.
So then, if you think about this is how Bill got its name. Every AP is also someone else's AR. Right. So then Bill added AR as a second offering, probably about 5 years after it launched. So you can send invoices. Now you're both sides. They started building the vendor network. Right. About 7 million vendors on the Bill network, which just blows my mind. So many small businesses. Yeah. And then a big pivot. Bill went public in 2019. Right after that, there was a kind of an emerging space called spend and expense management. A lot of players. The idea is that the credit card issuer also builds the software. Very tight coupling between the two programs. Sure. Bill acquired a company called Divvy, and that became Bill Spend and Expense. Okay. So then now suddenly you have accounts payable, accounts receivable,
and expense management.
All of your expense management, your credit cards, and then the whole tech with virtual cards that maybe we can touch on, but that now you're talking about a whole suite. Yeah. You basically have all of cash in and cash out at Bill. So he threw on forecasting because that really completed the picture. So I think we're the first ones to have all those together. Yeah. What
Renee, he's the CEO of Bill, has done so well is rather than taking on the accounting vendors of the world, he's partnered with them and integrated with them. So I just want to be clear that, this product, although it digitizes and helps manage receivables, payables, cash receipts, disbursements, all that forecasting, it all flows back into your accounting system. Right. And all the big vendors that are here, FreshBooks, QuickBooks, Sage, all the other ones, they all, Bill has integrations with everybody, right?
Absolutely. Bill has probably, I think, some of the most powerful 2A integrations. A lot of folks will say they integrate and they might have a service provider like integration as a service. We own ours. We build it in-house. It's super tight, and the data flow is very seamless. But yeah, we're not a GL. Yeah. We allow you to bring whatever GL you want. We'll send your data.
Right.
We'll save you time by not making you do journal entries. Right. We'll send the support over. So.
All right. So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I have a client. They're based in Trenton, New Jersey. This is a real client.
Yeah.
About 100 employees. They have a controller. They have a couple of people in their accounting staff as well. They're using QuickBooks.
Yep.
I've told them about Bill 100 times.
Sure.
Every single time they're like, yeah. We're too busy or whatever. And these guys are still, literally cutting paper checks. Half of the, it's crazy. What would you tell that client? This is like the story. This is your life, right?
It's literally.
Yeah. What would you, if you were in front of this client, what would you tell them? How would you persuade them to move to your platform?
I think I might start with a few questions because, they've heard about AP automation. They know software exists. They probably, they know how QuickBooks is online. I might say, how often are you asking your CFO for approval? Or I might say, do you have a good idea of what your payables aging is every day? There's just a couple things that might probe and try to find that hot spot, maybe that sensitive point where
That's
it's like,
advice.
oh my gosh, we spend so much time chasing down uncashed checks. Well, guess what? I can solve that problem for you.
That is great advice.
Yeah.
Does Bill have that kind of resources and materials for accountants that can prep us to ask those questions?
Absolutely. And that's actually another reason you mentioned Renee. He started as an accountant. He understands.
I forget the name. It was tax. It was the tax software company that he anyway.
Oh yeah, PayCycle. That was a different story. But even before that, he was had a degree, in accounting. But getting the tools to the accounting firms. We have a massive resource center. It's called the Bill Accountant Resource Center. But all of that information, all of the ways to kind of present the value props, it's all there.
Technology is obviously a topic I want to talk to you about. It is the smartest firms are leaning into it.
Absolutely.
And the smartest companies are leaning into it as well. It is bonkers to me when a company does not lean into platforms like Bill, given knowing what it is. I can understand it maybe 15 years ago, maybe it's new on the market or whatever. Yeah. But come on, you guys are using AI before AI became AI. It's now, it's bonkers to me, but okay. Where do you see it going with Bill? Where do you see technology changing your platform?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. There's probably, I would break it down into two areas. Bill is expanding to serve more use cases. We have things coming out like advanced multi-entity management. Right. So you said it works for SMBs. That's very true. We know there's even more customers we can serve. Okay. So I spend a lot of time talking to these businesses about where else we can help them. Procurement is something we're bringing to market. So you think about the AP lifecycle, getting the bill is kind of after a lot has happened. Yeah. Maybe you found a vendor, maybe you got some sort of approval internally to buy stuff. That's the procure to pay cycle. So we're expanding our footprint in that area. So I see a lot of just new functionality coming on in terms of just solving core workflows. But the more, probably the bigger in vogue topic at this conference and in the last year is where AI is going to take Bill. And there's a really exciting amount of investment in Bill. Like you mentioned OCR, that is a computer doing some work for you. But when you start to pair that with the large language models and you start to do things like you get more advanced line item coding. I talk to customers that are kind of on the upper end of SMB and they might get 100-page bill and then maybe they're in construction or something. And I'm thinking, man, that is ripe for innovation, right? So there's advancements where you're seeing, maybe it's not a whole full-scale agent, but it's improving accuracy, it's speeding up the workflow. So there's a lot in there. And I think, agents is on the topic. I think when we come to market, Bill has had a long history of knowing what accounting professionals do. Sure. We spend a lot of time with accounting professionals. So we're being very careful about how we go to market with that. So it actually solves a real problem. It's not just flashy.
Do you think this stuff works right now?
I think a lot of people say it works. I think it's like, remember when everyone was talking about big data in 2010? And it was like, data's the new oil, blah, blah. It's like, okay, everyone's saying AI. I think it's limited to large language models, the chat interface.
Yes.
But I think in the next year, you'll see actual value being delivered with an agent, especially for the accounting profession. So I'm excited for that, man. There's some meat on the bone.
I think that I could agree with you more.
Yeah.
And first of all, even with the generative AI models, I mean, they all admit that there's hallucinations going on left and right. There's still unbelievable productivity tools.
Right.
And I know a lot of clients that use it. They just do it with a little grain of salt. They understand not to just take everything that comes at face value.
Right.
Agentic AI is fascinating.
Yeah.
But it's still early days for that as well. And I'm assuming that Bill is going to be employing a lot of agentic AI technology in the future, but you just have to do it carefully, right?
We have to do it carefully. We want to make sure that beyond just things like hallucinations, where is the least value add workflow? When I talk to accountants, there's always some pessimists who think there'll be some sort of like big displacement of the profession. That's been proved wrong over and over again.
Yep.
Desktop to cloud, everything was fine.
Yep.
Paper to automated, that's fine. Like, accountants adapt. So I think what we want to do is say, how do we again take away manual work, do what we did, revolutionize the industry in 2010 with getting online? How do we take away any of the non-value add work, let you be that advisor?
Right.
That's the talking point, is you want to be the trusted advisor.
Sure.
The less time you spend moving data around, if that's an agent doing it,
right,
it could be like, maybe we thought about it as like an outsourced person in the 2015 era.
Sure.
Maybe that's an agent next year. We'll get there. It's coming. People are working on it. But that's how I think of it. It's going to free up that time.
Does most of your implementations, it comes through the accounting channel, I'm assuming, right? I mean, there's, it is a big part of it.
Accounting channel is a very big partnership for us. Like, we view them as such a strong partner, not only in helping us.
They're huge influencers.
Right, they're influencers, but they also keep us grounded on what is value add. Like,
right.
I spend most of my time talking to accounting firms in my product management role, looking for those areas we can help them with.
Yeah.
And that's been such a powerful two-way street for Bill and accountants. I think we solve their problems. They tell us, where it's helping. But yeah, it's a major part of the business.
Who's a good prospect for you? When you talk to an accounting firm, you'll be like, all right, these guys are awesome. This is going to be a great relationship. Or you must talk to someone you're like, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare. I'm curious to what type of accounting firm, what kind of mindset they have that makes like a really, really good, prospective partner for you.
People that use things like our roadmap, or they think about where we want our firm to be in a few years, that are a little more open to change, that's obviously going to be a great prospect. There are clients, not just accounting firms, but when I hear from clients, there's an accounting firm trying to onboard someone, and they are like, we will not move off of desktop. We will not move off of Paychex. Maybe it's not a fit. There are certain people stuck in their ways, right? And it's like, that's okay. The market's going to leave you behind.
Yeah,
so it's folks that are just asking the questions. Where is Bill headed? Here's my growth plan. How can you help me get there? I mean, those are the ones that are obvious places to find.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, that's great. Let me talk to you a little bit about talent and recruitment. And only because you're so exposed to the industry, you're dealing with a lot of people in our profession. We've had serious recruitment issues over the years.
First it was attrition, now it's recruitment. Everyone left, and now we don't have enough backfill.
Now we don't have enough people.
Right.
So maybe it kind of gets to that question, but I mean, like, first of all, why do you think that this has come about? Why has there been such a lack of supply of particularly younger people that want to become CPAs?
Yeah, I think.
Are you a CPA, by the way?
I am a CPA. Okay. Yeah, so I probably at the tail end of like the exciting group that are going to get the CPA. I mean, there are people.
Not that exciting, okay? We're CPAs.
That's the group that we're excited to go into it. Fair enough. We have to convince people. So I think a couple things. The new generation is looking for more meaning in work.
Yes.
There was a lot of obligation. Millennials are kind of known to be sort of these workhorses, and different generations have different places they want to see value.
Sure.
And so when you take the accounting profession and say, from the traditional viewpoint, you are crunching numbers, you're putting statements together, you're doing a lot of manual work, it's not inherently fulfilling. And I think that kind of the profession got deeply entrenched in that. The way that kind of the hierarchy of large firms was built, where, I mean, it's not unique. Investment banking has it too, but all the work rolls to the staff, and they're putting in 90, 100-hour weeks. there's a lot of innovation that can get rid of those 100-hour weeks. And so having firms, and I think the smaller firms are, especially with the outsourced accounting, audit and tax are the old pillars of the big four. Outsourced accounting is the fastest growing segment. And so when you reposition that to be, you're not just doing grunt work, moving data between systems, you're sort of an embedded advisor.
Sure.
I think it's more fulfilling.
100%.
You want to talk to the CEO and the founder of this company that you're the outsourced accountant for and be a partner to them.
Sure.
That sounds much better to me than slam out a close in 3 days and say, talk to you next month. There's not a lot there. So I think it's just reframing it in that it's about the partnership with your client and actually bringing them something unique.
And feeling that you're doing something with meaning and thinking that you're really making a difference. I think younger people want to have that feeling sooner than before. And it's funny because I'm 60 years old, so that people from my generation are like, oh, well, you have to put in your time or you have to make it whatever. And it's fair enough. I mean, there is something to be said for getting experience. You got to learn, right? There is a lot in technology and even in AI and even in the overall culture of social media and the web that has given younger generations way more information than I had when I was 25 years old, which can speed up the process of them becoming advisors.
I completely agree. Like closing the books on time for 10 years, that's great. That's experience. But can you actually automate half of that work, more than half of that work? Now you're actually spending time learning about the industry, about the trends. You're looking forward. Absolutely. Like there's a balance. There is a balance.
And there was always this thing with us, and again, I say us with my generation, because this profession has a lot of older guys like me in it. And we are, you're putting in 100-hour weeks during busy season, and you are defined by how many hours you worked. And
what's your billable hours quota?
What's your billable hours, whatever. And it just, and younger generations are like, man, that's not how I wanted to find myself.
It's a little different.
It is.
And speaking of billable hours, on that note, like when I talk to the most advanced CAS firms, like which ones are a fit for bill, pricing's a different discussion, but just maybe taking a step back from billable hours and talking about like management service agreements and how do you look as a partner? You don't have that fear, like I don't want to call my accountant, they're going to charge me for a 15-minute phone call. Take that off the table, talk about the value, charge for the value, that's a different discussion, but I think there's a lot in that too. Get away from that older mindset.
Yeah, it's a big change of mindset. I think it's starting to happen. I really do. And I think it's just, it takes time for new generations to start making decisions. Okay, so you deal with a lot of CPA firms. We talked a little bit about technology and what kind of is your best prospect or whatever. But I'm kind of curious, what firms, or it could be individual accountants as well, that you've met. How long have you been with Bill now?
I've been here for 4 years.
4 years. Yeah. So over the past 4 years, all the people that you have met, who turns you on? You're like, wow, this firm is crushing it. This is, if I was crazy enough to go back into public practice and have my own CPA firm, I'd be doing what those guys are doing. Without naming names, what are they doing? Yeah,
this one, it's hotly debated, but this is my point of view on.
Talk to me.
The firms that have an opinion of a tech stack.
Okay.
So I get these firms coming to me, and I have data to back this up in a second. And they're like, we use this software because we know A, B, and C about the industry or about the localized market.
Okay.
And just the fact that they have this strong opinion and they can go and convince their clients that why it's going to change the game for their client, they get me excited. And here's the data that I have to back it up.
I have a comment on that too. Keep going. This is great.
We did a survey with CPA.com and Bill, and we talked to firms about standardizing tech stack. Only 37% standardize. But here's what's wild. The ones that standardize say the conversation when they're bidding a client is about the value they can bring as an advisor and what they can do to improve the business operations and operating results, like the income. Sure. The firms that the other 63% that don't standardize, it boils down to how much does it cost? Jeez. And so it's wild. When you come with that product opinion, you can actually change the discussion from I'm an accounting firm as a substitute good, where it's just pick the lowest price and they can all switch out for the same thing.
Sure.
Change that to we actually have a direction we're taking you in, and now it's not about the price; it's about what value I'm bringing.
Sure.
So that's what I love that one.
So it's somebody that's basically they've drawn a line in the sand. They have a model, and they're saying we know this is right. This is what you're telling you to do. And don't you find my comment on that is that as somebody like my firm, we implement CRM software.
Sure.
And I can't tell you how many times over the years, I know when I'm talking to you as a prospective client, I know more than you about CRM. Like I know more about what you need, and it is our job to say to you, this is what you got to do.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, sign up with us. We will take care of you because we know what we're doing.
Right.
And I think that's what you're trying to say as well for a good CPA firm, right?
Exactly. It's like, of course, step one, listen, let the client be heard.
Of course.
Maybe they have their ideas. They're going to go to solution mode, but they're coming to you because ultimately they need some expert advice.
Right.
So it's a matter of, in that kind of client engagement onboarding piece, let them speak their piece, tell their pain points, and then bring in the expertise and say, because of this, we're going to change the game for you.
Got it. What do you say to those companies that are just not, that still have not understood the value that a bill brings to their business? And by the way, it doesn't have to be Bill. You guys have your competitors as well.
Right.
We're talking about the value of automation. Right. And still doing things the old way. What do you say to this? I mean, this is your chance. Like, what do you say to the people running those firms or those businesses that are still stuck in that mode?
I say, how does it feel being tied to your desk, being tied to your office, being tied to paper? I don't understand how you are running your business. Or if you are and it's working well, I'm going to change your life. I'm going to give you a week, a month back. Oh my word, let me get excited about this. Regardless of the tech, if you are not adopting these automation tools, maybe they have some AI, maybe they don't, but just generally letting tech take the workload off of you.
100%.
Let me give you a chance to breathe.
Yeah. It's funny too, because we were talking about talent, and what worse way is there to recruit people than to have systems that are from like the 1990s?
Oh, don't even get me started.
And you're trying to bring in good financial professionals. They're going to be asking these questions, right?
Right. They should be. If there is not a point of view at your firm where you're maybe going to take a step back once a year and look at your technology, look at where the inefficiencies are. Another survey we did on firms and their inefficiencies. 97% of firms know that they are not as efficient as they could be. They're very self-aware. But then taking that next step to say, what's the number one pain point? If you have a new person coming in, regardless of their generation, and they're not asking that question, they're not going to push your firm forward.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I have a funny story on that. I mean, when I first started in accounting, this is in 2010, I had audit clients who were still using black screen, green, MS-DOS, right? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like 21 at the time. How is this company operating?
What decade are we in?
You literally can't pull a report out of this without using the F keys on your keyboard. And I'm, a millennial, so I don't know what Gen Z is thinking. So those people, I see opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, Richard, final minute that we have.
Sure.
Where did you go to college?
University of Nevada.
So I'm going to take you back to University of Nevada.
Yeah.
You're graduating college. You can go back in time. Give your graduate, your senior self, some advice.
Oh, that's a good one.
What would you tell yourself back at that age, based on what you've learned so far being in the world?
Right out of college and my accounting degree, I think students feel, they know a lot of book knowledge. I know the amount of hours I spent studying for the CPA exam and the number of IRS regs I memorized. It's like, I got this. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm coming in with the best knowledge, which from a I don't know, book smart standpoint, sure. But I didn't have the realization until I started on the tech side that the people that hire you are not hiring you for the number of IRS regs you can quote. They're hiring you to be a thought partner. So I would say to my younger self, think about the businesses you're serving and why did that person get into business? And how can you help them achieve that goal? That's going to change the trajectory of your accounting profession, because you're not just grinding, doing 100-hour weeks to close the books, categorizing the transactions. Those are all important, but that's not the substance of the work. The substance is what comes after that.
That is great. That is great advice. Yeah, solving problems for your employer. I mean, that's what we're all looking for.
Right.
And that is great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Great conversation. You were awesome. We're out of time. We're gonna have you come. I'm gonna have you come back.
Sure.
We should do like a full half an hour episode.
Do a deep dive.
Do more of a deep dive.
Yeah, Gene. Well, I appreciate it. It was a great chat.
Yeah,
and,
it's great meeting you.
Thank you.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you would like to hear on Thrive? Please let us know. Visit payx.me/Thrive topics and send us your ideas or matters of interest. Also, if your business is looking to simplify your HR, payroll, benefits, or insurance services, see how Paychex can help. Visit the resource hub at paychex.com/works. That's WORX. Paychex can help manage those complexities while you focus on all the ways you want your business to thrive. I'm your host, Gene Marks, and thanks for joining us. Till next time, take care.
This podcast is property of Paychex Incorporated 2025, all rights reserved.